Okay, here we go. Welcome to episode 27 of the Georgie and Patty Show. I am Georgie.
And I am Patty. Hello and welcome.
Welcome, welcome. Today we have a really exciting show. We do have an inspiring human that we're going to be chatting with, interviewing, and he will be joining us at 10 a.m. So prior to that, we're going to have some exciting discussion based on a question that we received in the chat a few episodes ago. And we've been thinking about this question, and we thought it deserved a little more time to kind of dive into it, and we'll give you our thoughts and opinions on what we think that is. And it's basically, the question is, do we feel like you can build a 7-figure business? Was it honestly or authentically? I don't know the exact question.
Without using manipulative techniques, I believe was the basics of the question.
So we're going to chat about that. So good morning, good morning, good morning. Love seeing the good mornings in the chats, and for those on Facebook, we love seeing your good mornings too. So thank you for joining. Hey, my dad's joining. Yay, Daddy!
Hi, Georgie's dad.
So awesome. Oh, so good. Well, start us off, because I love your thoughts on this.
Oh, you have a quote. You got to do the things.
Oh my gosh, I'm getting so excited. I'm really excited about our interview today because Tyrell is one of my most favorite humans on the planet. But, that's right, I'm losing our flow. Quote of the day. This is what happens when we start early, actually, when we're actually organized and scheduled and on time. Throws me right off. Okay, quote of the day. So authenticity is the truest form of rebellion. And I heard that this morning on a live thing I was watching by a lady by the name of Shelley Paxton. You know, and we often talk here, especially about showing up as who you are, being your authentic self, bringing all your amazing qualities to the table in your business and in everything that you do. So when I heard this morning, I was like, oh, I got to share this with Patty too. Because often I think when we think of rebellion, we think of intentionally doing things that kind of rock the system. But the more I think about this, I'm like, this quote's really true. Like, if I show up as me and I take a stand for what I believe in, and I'm sharing my opinions and my beliefs, which can change, of course, that really is kind of a sign of rebellion. And I think for those of us that feel like we don't fit in the boxes, it's kind of cool. Like, I like it.
It's kind of like your whole life is a rebellion.
Yeah.
It's just, it's always been that way for me. It's like I've never fit in, ever. And you feel it, and it's just kind of like you're being different. And I remember when I was a kid, feeling different, being differently. This whole weirdo misfit thing. It's just like that's just been my experience. And because I think about things differently. I see the world differently. I say things that are unexpected. I ruffled a lot of feathers even when I was just a child, just by being myself. And yeah, it's just like we're rebelling just by being alive, just by expressing ourselves for who we are, rather than making an attempt to fit into what's expected of us. And I think that kind of gets those parts get shaved off and suppressed over time as we take the messages in that, oh, we're not good enough, we shouldn't be like that, we shouldn't say those things, we shouldn't believe that, we should be doing this other thing, and we try to conform so we can belong.
Exactly. So here's to being you and showing up as you.
Kind of a overarching theme. I love this comment. I think I'm getting more rebellious as I'm getting older. Yeah, absolutely. I think that I know for me, it's just once I hit my 50s, I'm like, screw it. I'm just gonna be me. I'm just like, I tried to fit in. I think a lot of us, try to fit in for a while, and then I'm like, no, I just give up. It's just like I'm not gonna be normal, not ever. That's okay.
It's so true. And I think you're right. I think as we get older, we often start to look to at actually what really matters and what's really important to us. And we're just like, you know what? I'm good. I'm going to show up as me, and you can like it or not. And that's fine. No problem.
Yeah, just can't be bothered to be a people pleaser anymore. Had teachers accuse me of challenging authority because I asked questions. Oh, can you relate to that, Georgie?
Oh my gosh, no doubt. It's one of the things with Mike, when I was raising my children, it was one of those things where I was like, you know what? You don't have to believe everything people tell you just because they're older. Asking questions is perfectly acceptable. And that includes teachers, and that includes me, and that includes your father. Because I think I believe it's a really great skill or characteristic to instill in our children. Because often we're, children to be seen and not heard. But I can honestly say through mostly my son, through his questioning of things, I've really had to stop and go, all right. I can remember when he'd be in trouble for something and I'd be like, and I'd be like, nope, that's it. Just go to your room. Mom, if you would just listen to me, if I could just say one thing and explain something to you, and then if you still feel that way, okay, so fine, go ahead. And you know what? So many times I'd be like, I hadn't actually thought about it that way. I hadn't seen that perspective. But then it opens up the conversation as opposed to right or wrong, and wanting to keep that dialogue open. But oh yeah, I can relate to that.
And there's that good old why question, and like that was the one that always got me into trouble. Why? Because nothing made sense to me. The entire world does not make sense to me. Didn't make sense to me then, doesn't make sense to me now. And I'm like, why? Why do we do it that way? And it's just like, because I said so, because we've always done it this way. And it's like, that is like the stupidest answer ever. And I'm just a why person. I want to know why. Why are we doing it that way? Why aren't we doing it in a better way? Why are we doing that at all? Doesn't make sense to me. If you can give me a good logical reason, I'm cool. Yeah. But if you don't have an answer for why, like I think we need to ask why more often. Why are we doing that? You want to look at your schedule. If you feel overwhelmed by your schedule and you have a whole lot of stuff in your list, you might want to just kind of go down and ask, why are you doing those things? Why are you doing those things in those ways? You can get a lot of insight from asking why. But yeah, it's seen as rebellious because you know why? Because people don't have good answers. They got shit answers for why.
It almost leads me into, like, even as we were talking about things this morning about, building companies and hitting 7 figures and stuff like that. For those of us who were taught in our childhood, why is because I said so. So now we're in a program and we're wondering why we're doing what we're doing, and we're wondering why we're not getting results. We often don't ask the question. And I'm just curious if that comes from underneath. There's probably that thing that we had when we were little. So asking that question isn't even acceptable.
Yeah. Because I said so. Comment in the chat right now. Typical response, don't be rude. Don't ask that. Don't ask questions. Just do as I say. Exactly. Because I'm the mom. Because I'm the mom. Because I'm the dad. That's what I heard all the time. Yeah, exactly.
I'm older. I've been here longer.
Yeah, just do what I say. Do it in the way. Yeah.
Totally.
And yeah, I think we're conditioned to take orders from people and to not not to do things our own way. And for some of us, we're just completely incorrigible. It's why I'm unemployable. It's like I just I'm not taking orders for anybody. I'm going to ask why. Nobody wants me working for them because of that. So yeah, that's why I'm independent and doing my thing, because I can ask why, and I can answer why, and I can come up with answers that make sense to me.
I can lose my earbuds so I can hear you.
We're so excited. We're flinging equipment around.
I know. Exactly. So true. So
I'm,
true.
see, I'm seeing so
That's
much stuff. I'll let you do the chat. I'm just seeing some,
okay.
the chat's just kind of.
Well, and I'm like, this is your permission slip for today. We don't actually have one as a
Oh my,
slide, but your permission slip is it is a-okay to ask why.
yes. Keep on asking why. Keep on rebelling.
Woohoo! Start with why. No, somebody has a different meaning for that, but
That's the sequel to the book. Ask why.
exactly. Yeah, be a U-shaped you, and you'll be fabulous. Exactly.
I think everybody here is unemployable.
I think we're all unemployable. Exactly. Exactly.
We'll work twice as hard for half the money.
That's
So
right.
we don't have a
That's
boss.
right. So true.
So
Oh.
tell me what to do.
I love it. Yeah, my kids have been such good teachers. Yeah, my kids teach me stuff all the time. It can be painful and humbling. So true. I feel you. And I believe though that's how we're raising really great adults. You know, like allowing them that space to ask questions and be curious and to listen to them and have the communication. It's literally when I had my son, who's my oldest, I was like, the only thing I really care about is I want to raise a good human. I don't care what he does for a job, none of that stuff, but I want to raise a good human. And sometimes that is not easy. And that means I want my children to question. I want them to be curious. I want them to explore and look at different options and see possibilities and try new things. And sometimes that results in fire extinguishers all over my house and interesting things in my trees, and but it's that it's that curiosity that I also don't want to squish. Oh my god, so many trips to the ER, mostly in sports though. Actually, with my son, it was all from sports, so they're pretty safe kids. But yeah, it's nice to be able to see them as adults having those qualities.
Comment in the chat. I'm kind of proud of the little buggers when they put me in my place.
Yeah, right?
How awesome is that?
It's so good. It's so good. I know. We used to listen to when my kids were tiny, like my son was in kindergarten, my daughter wasn't even in school, and we had quite a commute to school for them. And so I'd play Tony Robbins tapes all the time in the car, so they got a healthy dose of Tony. And often it would come back, Mom, what would Tony do right now? What would Tony say about this? We're going back to Wheels on the Bus. That's what I think Tony would say. It's just like, So, yeah, you didn't want your children to be followers. No, I didn't. That's for sure. That's for sure. So, yeah, so let's dive into this.
Yeah, let's answer the question. We promised to answer the question.
We promised an answer for a question before we start, before Tyrell gets here. Yeah, let's answer this question about, is it possible, if you want to build a 7-figure business without manipulation and stuff?
Yeah, I'm just gonna back up to the question as I remembered it.
Yes, perfect.
Was about, can certain individuals have had the same success if they had been honest and ethical in their marketing, if they decided not to use the psychologically manipulative techniques? That was more of the question, is could they have succeeded by through ethical means? And this is what had me thinking, because I'm like, okay, I'm thinking about some people that have made a lot of money using that kind of those kind of techniques and tactics. And my honest answer to this is, for not all of those people, but for some of those people, the answer is no. They would not be able to pull it off by being ethical and upfront and honest, would not be able to pull off that level of success. And the reason is because they don't deliver results for their clients. People sign up for programs and don't get results. Most people fail at them. They very cleverly kind of twisted around to make it the person's fault. You didn't believe enough, you didn't do the system right, you didn't put in enough work, you didn't do it right, something like this. But there's kind of, and I've seen marketing language around that this is guaranteed to work. No, not everybody gets results, but the people who don't get results, it's because they screwed up. It's not because of our program. So if you're selling something that doesn't get results, like if you're selling something that you have to hide the reality, if you're talking about the 3% of the people who have incredibly awesome results and just kind of brushing under the carpet the fact that most of the people do not succeed at it, multi-level marketing kind of falls into this as well. People at the top of the pyramid do very, 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 very well. People at the bottom lose their shirt. It's mathematical. It's like gifting circles. We were talking about that. Give your $5,000 and collect 40,000 out the end, and it's like the math doesn't hold. Most people who give up their $5,000 don't get the 40 grand. So if you're selling something that doesn't actually have value, that doesn't deliver the promise that you're making, then can you make 7 figures by being honest? Oh, hell no. Because this is the kind of the question to ask when you think about your own business. It's like, okay, if the person that I'm selling to, the person I'm bringing on as a potential client, if they knew 100% what this would be like, what this experience would be like, what they would get out the other end, like if they were fully aware of everything, if I didn't hold anything back, but they were fully aware of what would happen, would they buy or not? Like, would they be happy to buy or not? That's the question. So if you're 100% honest and people would be happy to buy from you, then, oh yeah, you don't need to do the manipulative stuff. And in fact, I'd even say that if you do that, you're going to look like the people who don't deliver. So if you can deliver results for people, then for sure, because you can be honest, people will get results, you'll get awesome referrals. So I believe that that's possible. I also believe that a lot of people are engaged in this unethical marketing because that's what they've been taught. And they might have a wonderful program. However, they're doing this craptastic marketing that makes them look like a charlatan. Because once you've been taken by one of these programs or a few of these programs, you become a little wary. So if you're engaging in the same tactics, like when I see the tactics rolled out, I have a really hard time paying attention to the content that's being delivered, paying attention to the essence of the offer. I often just write them off. It's like, okay, I've seen this before. I've seen this dog and pony show before, and they're selling shit because I've bought shit in the same way. And sometimes I actually have to slow myself down and say, okay, wait a minute, Patty, really check this out. Maybe there is value here. And I have in the past actually bought things in spite of the marketing, not because of it, but in spite of it. So I believe, in my opinion, that businesses can do very, 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 very well by being honest, providing they offer something of value. People have to want it. And I mean, this is the secret to success in business, is you have to offer something that people want. They have to be, like, if you have to convince or persuade in order to get people to buy it, that's hard. It's hard to do if you're doing it honestly, and it's even hard to do if you're doing it with the manipulation. It's like there's a lot that goes into that. Those guys work really hard at the marketing side about bringing people in. But if you offer something of value, like anytime I talk to successful businesses that have been around for a while, they have raving clients. They get referrals. I say, hey, what's working for you in marketing? They say word of mouth and repeat business. Word of mouth and repeat business. It's like, it's always that answer. Always, 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 always. That's what builds a good, sustainable business. Otherwise, you're constantly having to stay ahead of it. You're having to get new people in because the people who've been through aren't happy. So that is that's my little rant to answer that question.
Yeah, I totally agree. Right. I think it's absolutely possible. And then there's all these little, if you're honest, you're actually delivering what you say you're going to deliver. And I think the other piece of this too is if you're just getting started and you've you're pretty sure about what you can deliver. And then as you go through your program, your work or whatever, and you realize, darn, I'm not actually delivering what I said I was going to deliver, how you handle that makes a difference too. Because often we can think, oh yeah, I'm totally going to be able to do this. And we're like, oh, this isn't working quite the way I thought it was going to work. So then what else can you do to help deliver what you promised for people? You know, I think that's another, which goes back to that honesty and being ethical and authentic. You know, it's about showing up and going, oh, I thought this was going to be faster. We need to retool this. And it's not about, I think you need to give me some more money so I can keep experimenting, but it's how can you make good on what you promised to people with where you're at, which goes back to those honest conversations, being a human, talking to people in a real way.
And standing on the strength of your work, I think, is the other piece of it.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of the advice for making money fast, and this is often what it is, make money the fast and easy way, is to promise people enormous results in a short amount of time. Get rich quick. It's like if you translate a lot of these headlines and these promises from these programs, it pretty much plays out to get rich quick. In the marketing and business side, you know, in the health and call it health and wellness, lose weight overnight. Take this miracle supplement and drop 3 sizes in a week kind of stuff, right? It's in all of these things. You know, get a whole bunch of dates tomorrow. You know, become really good at picking up women or something like that. There's all of these kind of get this thing that you want really fast without having to put any effort into it. It's a really winning combination for an offer. I don't know where I was going with that, but train of thought derailed.
Well, I think it's about standing on your work, the quality of your work.
Oh, right, standing on the quality of your work, right? It's you know, the first, you know, one of the first places we go to when we talk about being honest is like, yeah, this is going to take time and it's going to take some effort and it's not going to be fun. That is not the world's best headline, but it is something that you need to discuss with your clients. Like, it's part of that sales conversation. It's part of the assessment, right? It's like you meet people by offering something that they want. You need to talk about what they want, or else they're not going to pay attention to you. So you need to meet them where they're at. And this is a challenge for a lot of us who are in the honest and ethical business. We need to start with what they want and what they're willing to buy. Then when you have a conversation, before you take their money, then you present, okay, here's how this works. This is what's involved. This is the reality of it. This is my professional opinion. This is how I do it. This is where the work comes in. This is what you're going to do. This is what I'm going to do. This is how it's going to play out. And then they go in eyes wide open to what you're offering. So there's a process to it. You know, you still need to do the marketing activities. You still have to have the conversations with people, but it's not about convincing and persuading as much as it is about educating. I know you want this result. This is what it's going to take to get it. In my professional opinion, this is what it's going to take to get that result that you're after. And here's what I'm going to do to help you get there. And totally honest, totally above board. And it only works if what you're offering is actually valuable.
Exactly. And I think you made a good point there about, you know, giving people what they want. And often that's not super sexy. It's not jargony. It's like, you know, we were talking about this before. It's weight loss. It's, you know, it's clients. It's the, I want to find the right guy. Like, it's pretty plain language. And often I think we want to have the cute, fun language, and it's not. So a couple chat questions here, or comments. This is exactly what I did. I used those sleazy tactics because I was taught that was the only way, and I didn't ask why. That way didn't work for me at all. So glad I've learned from you about an honest, ethical way. Yeah, and I think we've all been there, you know, and we don't know what we don't know. And sometimes we're like, oh yeah, why didn't I question that? Or why didn't I think about that? Or I got that feeling and why didn't I trust that? And it's learning and continuing to move forward. Here we go. Question. I'm about to finish the work to give a client what she came for. Before we end, I will go through the Venn diagram to show her the big picture. Thoughts?
Yeah, brilliant. And by the Venn diagram, she means like a map of the work that you're going to do with the client, or an assessment. And in fact, we teach this method of using an assessment as part of your sales conversation. And it's really, really smart to go through the assessment again at the end of the client engagement, because it can show progress. It can show that people have moved forward in those areas. And if there is still work to do, it gives them the option of re-upping with you, like, because that happens too. The clients want to continue to work with you. So, we work on transformational businesses where we help people become a better version of themselves, or help businesses become better, or whatever. It's like there's always the next level. There's always more growth, more learning, more more change, more evolving. So that's a possibility too. But it's nice to have that. It's a big part of, we talked about this yesterday, about selling the invisible. That's what makes transformational services so hard. It's like you're not packaging up the thing they want in a box. It's like you can't give them the pill that will magically have them lose the weight overnight. Georgie and I can't, pack up a box of customers some cash and ship it out to people. We help people get that, but we're not providing the result directly. Nobody who does this work is. So it's like, what's the next big thing, or the next best thing? And how do you show the progress? How do you prove that you have gotten results? And sometimes, if you've been doing this work for a while, that the value that they get out of the relationship with you and the work they do with you is often not what they came in for. It's something entirely different, and it's just as valuable or more valuable, and they can be happy.
Exactly. So Tyrell is on his way. He just said jumping on, so we should see him soon. So
Excellent.
Please know that you can ask questions of him too. He is a superhuman being. I was going to say superhuman. So please do continue to ask questions. We will probably go till 11 today, because he's coming on at 10, and I want you to get the value that he definitely has to offer. And I know we can talk for days, literally. And well, I will do my best to rein it in. I'm not going to say which is very cool.
Yeah, and of course, I realize, scheduling wise and everything like that, we may go, as Georgie said, we may go late. And if you can't stay here for the whole time, that's cool.
Yeah.
You can feel free to catch the remainder on the recording. We're recording all over the place. So
I may have to leave early.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yes,
no
exactly.
problem. We totally understand. Yeah. Absolutely. I'm sorry, I'm just going to check my text messages. Okay, to make sure. Da-da-da. Awesome. I say that word a lot. Da-da. Okay, go back to Facebook. Facebook is there. That's good. Yeah, look at our timing. Sometimes I'm just amazed by our timing.
Oh,
like really. Like you couldn't have wrapped that up more perfectly, if I do say so myself.
yeah, except see, there's a gap right now.
Nah, there's not.
Nobody's talking.
We're just scrolling because everyone's excited. They're almost as excited as me. I'm being quiet right now because I'm working at putting my excitement level down and being all calm because I love talking to super awesome humans.
Now, come on now. Are you suppressing the real you?
Oh, don't worry. It's going to come out.
That, Georgie.
Because here, I'll tell you guys before he gets on quickly. He'll probably show up right as I'm talking about this. But so Tyrell has done probably 2-3 events for me. And every time I'm like, I get really excited when I'm introducing because I think he is so incredibly amazing and he goes red. So I was talking to him before he agreed to do this, and I was like, he's like, oh yeah, there's been just enough time for me to forget what that experience is like. So I'm like, okay, I'll do my best to be a little more calm, and we both know it's probably not going to happen, but I will do my best. So I'm doing my best to rein it in a little bit. But hello. Oh, he's connecting to audio. I was just sharing with them about my amazing intros of you, because I said I was trying to be, I'm trying to calm myself down, and so, and they're like, oh, are you suppressing the real you? And I was like, no, but I'm trying to not make you go super red today, and you know how it goes.
I know how it goes. So I missed it. Did I miss it?
Oh, not at all. I was just trying to be, are you kidding? Not a chance. Not a chance.
Nice to see both of you, Georgie and Patty, and everyone else.
Hello,
Nice.
Tyrell.
Do you guys know each other? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Now you do. Woohoo!
You now, that's right.
That's right. So thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us today. As you know, you're one of my favorite human beings in the whole planet, because I think you're amazing. And I'm really, really excited that everyone here gets to hear about what you're up to and the amazingness that you do share. So I was going to write down your bio and I forgot, so that's okay. Yeah. So what I'll tell you doesn't really matter. They'll get it. I think I first heard Tyrell speak. I think you were probably 20 something, probably 22 or 23 at one of Jonathan Christian's meetups. And I was like, this dude has got something going on. Like, it was so, so great. I think you were probably talking about maybe social media, probably at the time, right. I think. Yeah. Yes, and I was like, this is really cool. So when I first opened my space in New West, I wanted to do these things called Connected Conversations. And I wanted to do it because I really wanted Tyrell to come and speak. I wanted to learn more about just his way of thinking, how he showed up, because for someone so young, like you're still young, but that time you were really young, like you really showed up in this way of being really together, very intelligent, and such a care for human beings. So the human that you were, I was like I really wanted to know more. First connected conversation I did was with Tyrell, which was awesome. The very last connected conversation I did actually at my new space was with you. So we have this kind of thing that happens, which is really, really cool. So I'm really excited for you to be able to share with people today. And so Tyrell is a former high performance athlete. And when you think
hiatus, it's just yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it's hard for me to say former, but I said it because yeah. And and I want people, when you think high performance athlete, I want you to think like Olympic good. Like we're talking like athlete here, like the real athlete, not like the Georgie athlete, like athlete. As well as he is an executive. You're VP, right? VP?
Yeah.
At a technology company?
At a technology company in Vancouver, yeah.
Yeah, and he is a coach on human performance, which I'm super excited to talk about too, because I'm all about human potential and how do we unlock that. So we are going to get there. Yeah. So I thought we could start maybe with you sharing a little bit about your background, like the athletic thing, how you got into that, all of those things, and then kind of how you can transfer those over to what you're doing now and how you show up now. And then of course I have a million questions and people can ask questions, and then we'll dive deeper into the things you're doing now.
Yeah, I love it. And I wanted to start just by kind of, I think, reaffirming that point, maybe just around, I would love to hear, like, I have a feeling we'll go on a journey that's, partially in the business world, partially in the human performance world. Those worlds are always connected for all of us anyways, but I think I would love to hear what are some of the questions that come up from, the folks watching and the two of you as we go forward. So I have this concept called, the deep end and the deep end mindset, which is really kind of a cornerstone of how I live my life. And I think what's important to know about me is that I was exposed to that. My life kind of like got put on full throttle pretty early, like when I was 8 or 9 years old. And as Georgie alluded to, it started in the domain of athletics, right? Like I basically saw basketball players on the TV and came to learn that they were, you know, NCAA Division I athletes playing in front of 20 or 30,000 people. And I just told my parents that I want to do that. And, you know, this concept of a tribe or people that support you in your dreams and your aspirations, no matter what, I'm so grateful and privileged that I had that from that, you know, from such a young age when I was 9 years old. And that kind of that goal, that big, hairy, audacious dream sparked what ended up being probably like a, you know, I guess a 8 or 9 year journey to achieve that, you know, NCAA Division I dream. And so I went down and I played basketball in the States. I was able to captain and won championships here in BC in high school, went down, was able to be the captain of my team, won conference championships, had the best 2 seasons in the history of the entire university's lifetime, went to the March Madness, like did all those amazing things, and it was fantastic. But really early on in my basketball career, I don't know why, but I think it's a function of some of the life experiences that I had, but I started to realize there's this translation between, in my world, athletics, but the things that we choose to do outside of our job or outside of our family that have this opportunity to translate or transcend the field or the vehicle or the thing and actually teach us bigger, more applicable skills. I think one of the earliest, one of the experiences, we can go into this in more detail, but I had to make a decision to transfer to a totally new high school or elementary or middle school, grade 7, to pursue this basketball dream. So I had to leave behind all of my friends that I knew from kindergarten and like anything that was comfortable in life in order to like be the best. And the day or the first few weeks that I went to that school, I was bullied really, really harshly from some of the older athletes, the guys that I was aspiring to be. And I just it did not make sense to me. Like we were playing a game of bump in, lunchtime, and I just was like bullied and, kind of pushed around and all that stuff. And I just went into the bathroom after lunchtime and just cried, right? I was so shocked and devastated. These guys that I idolized, why were they treating me this way? And, I had this light bulb moment because we were a kindergarten to grade 12 school that as there were little kindergarten and grade 1 kids walking around me and I was holding a basketball and they were looking up, like physically looking up at me, I just had this moment like, oh, I am that grade 12 to these grade 1s and 2s. And so these huge foundational pillars of my life of like positively influencing and impacting the people around me, building leadership skills and capacity in terms of taking a group of 12 basketball players that are like 11, 12, 13, 14, all the way up to in their 20s, and going and accomplishing a provincial or a national championship. These are all of the skills that I've since taken and translated over. And that's more on the like business side, certainly for some of them, leadership for one. But then there's this whole set of physiological practices and protocols and rituals that I've also been able to translate over. And this whole idea of like, leading and performing in the business world like an athlete, I think there's a lot of truth to that. And there's a lot of opportunity for all of us, I believe, this is obviously my own personal bias, to take some of those rituals on how do we recover, how do we maintain our energy, how do we sustain and be resilient into our businesses, into our like entrepreneurial endeavors, etc.
I think that's so true. And I think it's the humanness too, right? Like literally that when you change schools and then being able to actually take that event and look at, oh, these smaller kids are looking up to me like that. I think that is such a pivotal moment. And I would say it's probably influenced a lot because that is how my experience of you, how I see you show up in the world is like that. Like I have never, in the times I've been around you and the conversations we've had and the way that you interact in a room full of people, it's like that. It's like there is this awareness of how I show up and the things that I say and what I do in this space, the energy that I show up as impacts those people around me.
Yeah. I mean, and that's for all of us as business owners and leaders and, whether in our community or around our employees, like that's true. And, and I think the dynamic that we sometimes forget is that those employees or those community members or our kids or like, they're always looking. right? They're not just looking to you when you're trying to teach them a lesson. They're like, those grade ones are always looking at you, and learning and trying to assess and make changes to their lives based on influence. And so I think it's a globally applicable rule, and something that sometimes, I mean, I certainly see and have been guilty of it myself. We take for granted all of the opportunities to have impact on people because they seem like such small and insignificant things, right? Stopping to say hi to someone, how are you doing? How did your day go? Caring about someone's life outside of work, all of those things. But those, if you look at really powerful business cultures, I think there's a lot of that woven into kind of the DNA, so to speak, of how those teams interact and how they engage both on the business side, but then really, like you said, on the human side.
Totally. It reminds me of that. I think you even wrote a blog post about it, the lollipop moments.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
It's all these, what's that? Explain the lollipop moments.
Yeah, I mean, that probably goes back, like, that post and that like a mini TEDx talk. And I can vaguely remember the narrative of the talk, but the point is that, like, this guy was talking about experiences and ways that he had treated people years ago in totally insignificant manners, and those people coming back full circle, months, weeks, years later, and basically saying that one moment that you don't even remember changed my life, changed the trajectory of who I am today, right? And like the point is, and my point is, that we're all capable of those things. It doesn't mean we all do it or we know how to do it today, but we certainly have the capacity to be creating those experiences in our lives, whether in work or personal.
Absolutely. Because it's like, I think in the post you written about too, like, when you're walking down the street and it's just looking people in the eye, it's like smiling at people. It's these tiny little micro experiences that we have, and we often don't realize the impact that those moments have for that other person, as well as for us, if we're really willing to sit down and accept it, I think.
Yeah. Thanks, Karen. Drew Dudley, you got it in the chat.
Nice. Yeah, you guys feel free to ask questions.
Yes,
too,
please.
because it's super fun, and we like interaction. I had a question that came up for me this morning too. It's sort of a little, not off topic, but I'm just going to go there because whenever I got the text from you this morning about like, I'm mostly on hiatus or former high performance athlete. So often I find people are really attached to the identity of their role. Yeah. And so I think about you, who high performance athlete, on your way to the Olympics, get injured, and I'm sure not easy. And from my outside looking in, it looks like you have a pretty strong sense of who you really are on that authentic level, so that you're not so tied, your identity isn't so attached to the role.
Yeah.
That you're able to make those transitions easier. I'm not going to say they're easy, or maybe be more resilient, which is probably part of the work that you do.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, go ahead. I was going to say, because I think it's a challenge for people, that attachment.
I think there's so many layers to that, and a lot of, like, that's the $1 million question, maybe, or the question that makes us feel like we get to live like we're worth $1 million or more every day of our lives. And what I mean by that is, again, I believe that I have had the privilege and the good fortune of suffering at really intense levels when I was extremely young. And so what I mean by that is, between the time when I was 9 and 13 or 14, I basically didn't spend summers at home hanging out with all of my friends. I was shipped off to other continents and other parts of the world to play basketball with total strangers in very intense, aggressive environments for like 4 to 10 weeks at a time, literally crying myself to sleep every single night because I was alone. There were no cell phones. My parents didn't know who I was around. I didn't know these people. Everyone is gunning for you, so nobody likes you. And basically through that process, I was broken over and over again. And I had that tribe, that support system of my parents that just helped me sustain, not give me the answers, but just somehow trick me into believing that I could survive it. But what I did, my own defense, or my own survival mechanism, and this is partially because I'm really introverted as like a human, I journaled every single day when I was down in Philadelphia or San Diego or, you know, overseas, wherever it was. You know, I would just write in my journal. And that was this process of me starting to own something that's bigger than the sport of basketball or the court. Because when you're on these, you know, these trips and you're all alone, you realize how fickle a sport is, or whatever we're doing in this present moment. Some days are good, some days are bad. Sometimes it can be super depressing. And so like that clearly wasn't enough for me. And so I started to dig down deeper to try to understand, okay, what are the bigger things that I care about? And that was only really the start of this like really intensive and generally intentional reflection process to peel back the layers, to say, because it's not that I don't have an identity in my role, it's that the identity in the role that I'm trying to carve out for myself is over a 50-year time span. It's not the 4 years of the Olympics. That's just literally a vehicle that will help me learn and grow at a faster rate when it comes to pushing outside of my comfort zone, when it comes to understanding, operating at our highest level of performance, both athletically and like emotionally, and achieving these big, hairy, audacious goals. And then obviously being a leader and being able to speak and all of these really top level skill sets, they're just vehicles to help me grow those things. And so I say all of that because in all of the leaders and the groups that I work with, I've come to this realization that we don't get taught the process of really intentional reflection and kind of facilitated peeling back of the layers of ourselves. We're not taught that in school. We're generally not even taught that in our athletic, you know, in our high performance athletic circles. And so we have millennials out there and various folks in their careers that haven't done that work. And then, you know, when you're not pushing yourself into those uncomfortable corners, all you have left is the thing that consumes the time during your day to hold on to. And so then I think that's where you get into these identity, you know, really trying to, like and so like then the full circle of that is your brain then has something to latch onto from a fear mechanism perspective to paralyze you to stay in that role, because without it, you don't know what you are. And so then you get, you know, you have these examples where people are staying in a position that they're not like operating at full throttle. I woke up today and I was like jittery even before having coffee, because I'm excited to do my job. I'm like so pumped up and nervous to have this conversation with you because I care about it so much. But that's only come through a whole bunch of really hard conversations with myself, pushing myself outside of my comfort zone so many times, and ultimately going through this like hundred of thousands of times of reflections to understand, like, what do I really care about? What do I want to be doing in 40 years from now, in my 70s and 80s, that I'm doing today? Do those things even exist? And if not, what changes do I need to make?
Exactly. And I love that so much, because you do look at the long-term picture. Like, you know, this is like, and I think this is on your website too, where you're saying it's like, this is a pilgrimage that you're on. You're looking at this thing for like the next 50 years. How do I bring this into fruition? And I'm doing this, it's daily, but I'm not looking for that short-term gain or that, you know, instant gratification of, woohoo, now I'm blowing this up and it's amazing. But this is really a long-term thing that my life is committed to.
Yeah. And I think it's what I love, you know, about the journey of life is that we have this opportunity to like continually learn and grow. And so the conversation that that you and I have been able to have in these snapshots over the years, there's work that I'm doing in my own life, but also with the, you know, the leaders and kind of driven humans that I work one-on-one with, that I wasn't doing even 6 months ago. Because this process for me, I continue to better articulate it. And so when I look at the time horizon of what I want to accomplish or how I want to show up, and it's the same, I think, for all of us, I think it starts in, I almost like having the full canvas there for people to look at. And that means like, what's the long game of life? That simple question. What are you doing today that you hope that you're still getting the privilege to spend your time doing when you're 80? What are those things? Like, what can you sustain that long? But then zooming closer and saying, you know, because the closer we get to today, the more we have to be up on that surface level of like, how are you spending your time? Like, what are the vehicles that you're invested in, the actual like career, you know, ambitions, pursuits, hobbies, etc. What are the skills that you're getting a little bit below the surface that you could potentially transfer to the next, whatever the next thing is in 6 months or a couple of years? And ultimately, like, I think having this 10-year time horizon of skills that we want to work on and domains that we want to be positioned in, at least for those of us who want to continue to accumulate or magnify our impact, those are really important concepts, because nothing, I think, you know, like, nothing good externally, but way more important internally, is necessarily accomplished in weeks or months. And so we need to do the hard work to say, okay, what can I invest 60 hours a week or 10 hours a day in, because I'm so fired up and I know I'm going to get knocked down and I know I'm going to be broken and I'm going to want to quit, but I have like the support network to see me through that. And I can still see myself saying that in 10 years from now. You know, so like, I think all of those milestones are important. And when you start stringing them together, then you can start to say things like, okay, what do I need to do from a daily ritual process perspective, prioritization, focus, you know, today and this week and this month, so that I'm, you know, slowly and directionally working towards those bigger milestones.
Exactly. I think because a lot of the people in our community, our audience that can see, they're people that deal in transformation, right? Help people have some kind of transformation. And I think anytime we're doing kind of transformation work, it's like that, you know, the results aren't quick. And then as you keep, like you say, digging in, there's another layer and another layer and another layer. And I'm going deeper and deeper and I'm learning more and more about myself. So having these longer timelines that then we work backward can make it so much, I think it can make the journey a lot nicer for us too, as opposed to just, oh, it's not happening now. You know, and it's that uncovering of who we are and how that translates into everything we do.
Yeah.
And Patty often talks about, you know, like our life energy. Where do I want to spend my life energy on? Because we only have so much time to do so much things in this realistically short thing we call our life. And what is important and where do I want to put that energy to? And I think without that diving deep and that reflection and getting really clear on where do I want to spend my time? How do I want to do this? How important are these different rituals that you talk about that allow me to show up in the best way possible to do the things that I want to do? All such important pieces.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. So maybe share, how do you define flow? I love that on your website too, by the way. Honestly, I feel like literally, this is me. Every time Tyrell writes something, sometimes I don't even like it, even though I do really like it. I'll probably message him. I really love it because I feel like one of those stalker people. I'm like, hearts, every time you write something, because you're a really, really great writer. But I do love that about what you have on your site, right? And I want to go into kind of all three of these things about living in flow, swimming in the deep end, and then that, you know, constant learning. I would like to hear more about rituals. We are definitely going to get into the rituals when I get him to share about kind of his process and his work.
Yeah, definitely make sure we have time for rituals, because
We're going to.
Every single day I'm like, oh my gosh, I just need to talk more about this because it doesn't exist.
I think it's totally true. So we'll tell us what flow is, and then maybe we should just dive into your model.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, like, at the end of the day, it's all connected, right? So, I mean, I've spent a lot of my time probably over the last, like, just really high level, the course of my life has been, you know, high exposure, like high suffering, living, like spending so much time in the deep end. And then as the dust of that has settled, like kind of from 9 years old to 15 and then 20 and 25, a lot of the work over the last like 5 to 8 years that I've done has been trying to understand and like articulate for myself and then eventually for others what has allowed me to do these things, what are the good things, what are the bad things, and then breaking them down into like the equation that we all have access to. And so, you know, a lot of that, like, I'll get into probably talking about our nervous system and, you know, our limbic system and our vagal nerve and all these things that like are really important in terms of understanding how our bodies and our brains work and communicate. Because whether we're talking about, you know, flow, just landing the plane there for a second, is essentially, you know, the state of highest performance, you know, and really it's probably the state of highest presence, you know, that we have possible. It's this, you know, this moment in time where all the stars lined up, where we could care less about what happens in 5 minutes or 5 years. We're not concerned about the doubts and, you know, the imposter syndromes of the past. We're just immersed in this moment. And typically there are these ingredients, and there's like, you know, there's a massive amount of literature and study around this, but, you know, the epitome of where we can find flow states in my mind is when we are able to access this deep end, you know, of life, where we are intrinsically motivated. And before we can even be intrinsically motivated, in my opinion, we have to know, like, what the heck do we care about in life? What are the values? What are the things that are non-negotiable to me? Because generally that's where we want to be. We want to be spending our time in alignment with that. And we want to be spending our time in alignment with that, doing things that intrinsically drive us. Right? That I would be willing, I would pay people to let me do this. That idea of intrinsic drive, intrinsic motivation. And then we have to be willing to, like, go for it, take a risk, jump in the deep end, and know that we might fail, know that if we fail, there are definitely going to be consequences, you know, whether it's ego or financial or, you know, et cetera, physical for a lot of people, right? The greatest flow states are generally referred to as athletic. Part of that is because of the physical demand and physical risk. And, you know, and then we have to be outside of our comfort zone. And all of these things create this, like, hyper-focused, hyper-present, hyper-conscious state that we can generally do our best work in. And so, like, and it's also euphoric, you know, because I think one of the things that I realize is that it's really hard. I mean, we all know it's hard to get to those states. It's hard to maintain them and sustain them. And when we're not in those places, generally that's where the worry and the stress and the anxieties fit in, because we're giving, like, because our brain is able to go out into the future and worry about all those things, or reflect and kind of sit in the past and bring those things forward. So the goal, like that live in flow, is to have the ingredients in our lives, all of those prerequisites, so that we get to that place and we get to experience it. And where rituals fit in, I believe, is that getting to a flow state, or getting to a place where we're, you know, the other way for me to describe it in the corporate world is like, I wake up and I'm on fire. I go into a meeting and I'm like buzzing because I'm so excited, or I come out of a full day session and I'm like just on like cloud 9, right? Those are all proxies to us being in really great performance flow states. It's hard to get there because it requires us to jump into the deep end, to overcome our fears, to go head to head with stress, nerves, anxiety, tension. So that costs us energy, but then also because we're so present, we're giving our all in that moment, it also costs a lot of energy. And so the ritual component is to do a couple of things. One, right? One is to recover our energy, recover our capacity. One is to be able to actually digest a lot of the things that because the other thing that happens, right, is when you're in a flow state, you're so immersed in the present moment that a lot of the information and the data and the learnings, you know, essentially are subconscious, and they're getting archived for later. So that reflection process is partially just to dig out, like, what are all of those things. But the third piece is to, like, be in control of our nervous system, so that we can shift from, like, sympathetic fight, I'm gearing up, I'm going for it. And hopefully in some cases that's a flow experience. In a lot of cases, it's just anxiety and stress that we get triggered by. And so rituals and routines can help us down regulate back into, like, the sympathetic, rest, recover, you know, let the subconscious and creativity processing happen. So yeah, the flow and rituals, that's how they play together. And that's how I describe a flow state.
Perfect. Awesome.
Yeah.
So I think that leads us perfectly into then basically your, we can either call it the deep end mindset model work, or kind of this unlocking our human potential.
Yeah. And I'd say, like, the way that it's continued to become clear for me is that there's these two components, and we've talked a little bit about the kind of the deep end and the ingredients and the path it takes to get there. I'm happy to go further into really specific detail. But so that's one piece. You need to figure that out before you even need to care about the physiological leveling up, right? The, like, human performance piece, because if you don't have that foundation, or the thing that you're immersed in, the other piece is going to be as beneficial. But if you do have that deep end dial, then you're like swimming way over your head in the unknown, huge amounts of challenge. You're fired up, but you're also scared to death. That's kind of like the sweet spot. Then, you know, like there's a lot of really simple things that we can do, and I do not see a lot of people doing, from, you know, meditating every single day for 5 minutes a day, writing down our gratitudes, being connected with nature, you know, going for walks outside, taking completely disengaged breaks from our work. Like, so being able to take, like, out of this, these are kind of questions that I would love to hear
Yes.
feedback on, like how many of us actually get up from our computer, go and do something that is like accessing a totally different part of our brain for 5 to 10 minutes, 5 times every day. How many people are jumping in like 40 degree Fahrenheit, like 4 or 5 degree water and working on breath for 5 minutes, right? On and on and on. But so there's 2 components. One is the protocols themselves. What are the things? The other one is being able to build them into your day in a way that you can actually do them for 90 days in a row, minimum, bare minimum. And that's where I see people really struggling, is that like, great, January 1st, I'm going to meditate for 40 minutes a day. Like, this is going to be awesome. And a week later, maybe they're meditating for 10 minutes a day. Most likely, they're probably not doing it at all. And so this consistency over complexity and like quality of exposures over time versus quantity are things that we, you know, I think there's lots of opportunity for us to more effectively build that into our lives.
Totally. I'm curious too. So in the chat, just put how many people do meditate daily, and even if it's like for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Or how many people that was not 5 times a day, but yeah. And I think the break from technology. Let's see. I've learned over the years my own journey of facing hard personal challenges continually, and having to face them and work through them is intertwined with what I am then able to incorporate and apply to being more present and skilled to work with others. It is a continual personal journey that is part of what I bring to others.
Yeah.
Yes, I love my Insight Timer app.
Thanks, Adrienne.
I don't, but would like to. Yes, I meditate daily, 10 minutes first thing in the morning. Break from technology, yes. Nature, yes. Daily gratitude, yes. Daily
I'm not seeing any of the immersing in cold water
Yeah.
stuff. I'm willing to bet that the percentage is pretty low.
Yeah. Especially doing it.
Never.
One of the things that it's taken me a long time to learn, and I hope others can, that this to a certain degree, is like there's a relationship between how much we're putting out every day and the intensity of that. Like, and so for this week, for example, for me is like completely full week, like work wise, it's like every day I'm like showing up and I have to be on for like 10 hours straight. And so there's a relationship between that and how intense our recovery and our toolkit when it comes from like a recovery and a physiological perspective needs to be. And I think that again is where we can get into a little bit of trouble, is like not being super present with how our energy expenditure is going from like the outward sympathetic, like pushing the limits, building the business, knocking on doors, sales calls, everything, busy weekends. And how we're intentionally recovering. And there's times where you don't need as much recovery because you're in kind of a slower stage, or you're actually in a down cycle, a valley after a huge peak performance, which like you need those, and those need to be taken with like permission to sit and rest. But I think what's really helpful for those of us pushing hard and knowing that you're going to have the days and weeks that are just so intense is matching that with as much recovery, like your toolkit of recovery. And as you do more and more of this, you get more, there's more intuition around what you need, whether it's like yesterday, taking a 45-minute nap in the middle of the day and then jumping in a cold pool because I was just so overstimulated from the last couple of days. So like understanding what that relationship looks like on paper, so you have a plan, and then also what it feels like, so that during the days, you know, like, okay, I'm crashing. What do I do? What's in my toolkit? How can I make sure that maybe I don't come back, like the goal and the expectation isn't that like I can recover in 5 minutes. It's that I don't get into a chronic state of illness, fatigue, disengagement, right? Like we want to mitigate all of those long-term like burnout related type of experiences that are totally real if we're not paying attention and tuned in.
And are you doing all of these things every day?
My daily ritual and like kind of protocol, it definitely evolves and changes over time, but like right now, just really high level, right? Every day is I'm basically take a cold shower first thing in the morning and really working on like breathing. Like that's the reason why I do cold exposure. It doesn't have to be long, but I have to feel a shift to parasympathetic.
Yeah.
I spend a little bit of time with my kids, do a movement routine that's like typically 2.5 to 5 minutes, really short. When I'm driving to my parents' house right now, where we kind of have a multi-purpose family, bubble work office. I meditate and breathe in the car to and from. And then, I'm doing typically like a workout, a cold exposure, a nap with some like meditation music, writing down my gratitudes and focus for the day. And then kind of doing the same thing to close out the day. So cold shower, a workout in the evening if I haven't gotten one in. And then really trying to like disconnect, for me, finding things that I can do to physically shift myself from work to family, right? And like that has been heightened with COVID and us being typically those two worlds being closer together. So making sure there's a really clear ritualistic type thing, like you can even be going from the office or the bedroom where I'm working outside with my kids. And that represents the transition to family time at home. Those are some of the rituals, and those are daily, like non-negotiable daily happening.
Yeah. Well, because I think we often negate the importance of recovery. It almost goes against what we think we should be doing. Push. And then I don't have time for this over here, but we don't realize how important that recovery is to allow us to continue to push forward and do the things we want to do, say in building our business, because most of us people here are business people.
I think we had this conversation a while ago, which I think is really exciting. And I love the work that, this whole community is doing, because you're asking the right questions from day one. And part of what allows us to take more recovery is when we're looking at initiatives and things that we're passionate about that we're trying to build, not in like a month or 6 months, but in 6 years or 20 years. Because what we're allowed to tell ourselves then is that like, yeah, today is important and this week is important, but if I could trade, pushing to the limit and knowing that I'm going to burn out and get sick, and like I've done, like hospitalize myself out of my own burnout, and be hospitalized and non-optimal for a month, versus taking this day for what it needs to be, fully recovering, lying in bed or walking in nature for hours, if that's what it means, so that tomorrow I can get up and I'm back to optimal. Because I need to accumulate days, and like days need to accumulate into years, and I have to string those together over the course of like, a 6-year or 10-year journey. Versus sometimes when we look at building a business, or like that's part of, what I'm the stage of professional career that I'm in, I'm trying to build a business and be a leader in the team doing that. If it's like, I need to accomplish this in this month, or like these 6 months, there's so much pressure on every day, right? We can sometimes like trick ourselves into the short game, which ultimately leads to that like diminishing returns of performance and engagement and fulfillment, etc.
Totally. I like that. So a cold pull's no excuse. Apparently not. Developing a customized, individualized recovery toolkit is something I want to think more about and help others to develop also. So many people don't take needed recovery time and actions. So true.
Yeah.
I love the perspective of the long view across a lifetime. If we could all keep this in mind, the fear of minor setbacks would be reduced. We would feel like everything hangs on the thing we're doing or investing in right now. Also, it makes you think about taking the first step towards larger goals. Example, learning a skill like playing a musical instrument, painting, writing, or some other activity that you will then be able to enjoy for the rest of your life. Yeah. Totally. Did I miss anything?
Yeah, and I think the ultimate, like the pinnacle of life is where we know ourselves so deeply, and that knowing is evolving on a regular basis because we're doing the things to help that like uncovering, to the point where we know directionally in our lives where we're going, and it doesn't matter whether we get to live 5 more days or 50 more years. We know the course, we know the compass heading. That's going to change. There's almost no point in looking that far in the future because it's guaranteed to change. But we get to experience today with that knowing, and like then like that is the ultimate point of fulfillment, right? Is like where we get to wake up every day and be like, life could go totally down the drain. You know, I could lose my job, we could lose our house, we could be out on the street. And as long as these foundational things are in place and I kind of know the direction heading and I like have what I need to thrive today, those challenges and those setbacks aren't viewed as fears, but they're par for the course. They're actually the things that are going to catalyze us faster to whatever that heading is. Because without that tension, without that friction, like there is no learning, there is no growth. So like we get to have this whole perspective shift around fear, uncomfort, unknown, risk, failure, on and on, like the things that actually are the most healthy for us in life when we can persevere through them and learn from them.
So true. And I think also having that really deeper knowing of ourselves and peeling all that back and really getting to know and understand ourselves, I think that also allows us to show up in the world more as who we are, where we're not as impacted by all the messages coming at us and I should be this, I should be that, you have to do it this way. I think you're able to really start to develop and articulate your own beliefs, your own opinions, and really start to stand in that, which then, you know, attracts the people who believe what you believe, attracts your tribe of people, attract the people that are there to support you, the people you can lead and impact. And I really believe that does come through that really deep introspection of who am I? What do I care about? What do I stand for? What are my values? Am I living every day in alignment with that first, as opposed to looking at all these external things of how I should be?
Yeah, and that really creates this, like what you see, what I've seen in that is when you get to that place, you are able to actually create a feedback loop that helps you learn and grow faster because you kind of know like, okay, these are the things I care about. These are the things I believe in. This is what I'm invested in. And therefore, you know, hopefully we can get to a place where out of service of learning, not out of service of being right, we can go and challenge the people around us on like, is this right or is this wrong? Or this is what I'm standing up and stepping out for. And that actually helps us learn and grow faster because we're probably going to get feedback and hopefully get feedback along the way that challenges those beliefs and makes us go deeper to really own them at a new level. And by the way, there's no difference between that as a human, as an individual, and that as an entrepreneur building a business. You need to know what the business and the purpose of why you're doing it and what, you know, product or service you're bringing to market. And then you accelerate your product market fit by going out and getting real, honest, legitimate feedback and people telling you like, no, this thing sucks because of this reason, or I don't care about this because of that, or I really love this part, even though you may have thought like, oh, that part doesn't really matter. And you need to be able to take that like pretty vulnerably, obviously, as a human and as a business owner, and then collect enough data so that you can make data-driven decisions on how you continue to navigate to that closer fit, right? So like, there's a lot of parallels there in terms of mindset.
It's so true. It's funny. Caddy and I talk about this all the time, right? It's about experimentation and it's about that the difference between imagination, like, oh, I've created this thing in my head. It's going to be the best product ever. Everybody's going to love it. It's going to do this, this, this. And there's never been any actual data of real clients, real feedback. I've never even tried it before. And yet we're basing all of our marketing, everything on this imagination thing. Whereas you have to take it out into the world and get that actual feedback. And I love what you said about, you know, about standing up for our beliefs. And I think the other piece of that too is being willing to change them if we need to. Like having those conversations with someone where it's like, I hadn't thought of that perspective before. And I think that comes with knowing yourself, being grounded in your own beliefs, and that openness to being like, I actually value what other people are saying to me, and I can take it in and go, does that work? Doesn't it work? Have the conversation. Tell me more about how you see it that way, because I hadn't thought about that. And I think that really creates amazing dialogues that we can have globally with people when we look at different things from other perspectives.
Yeah, and just on that point, like I agree with that, and I think it doesn't have to be pretty. Like those conversations, we don't have to have this picture in our mind that we're going to have this diplomatic conversation, be it in life or in business. Like a couple of my, so first of all, like part of why feel so privileged to be in a marriage and a relationship with Tash, my wife, is that we constantly are challenging each other, and it's hard, and we fight, and we get stubborn and prideful, and we get our backs up. But man, by some amazing, miraculous, like we have this ability to, whether it's after a few minutes, sometimes it's a few hours, sometimes it's days, come back together, right? Come together and say, what did we learn? How do we grow from this? How can I change? Like, wow, I like really screwed up here, or, you hurt me here because of this. Like we're learning constantly, and marriages are part of that type of connection, whether, where it's a long period of time and you're spending a lot of time together, it accelerates that learning. But one of my favorite examples in the business world of this happening was when I was at a previous technology company. I was in a room with my CTO, and like there was just this conversation that there were clearly leaders on totally different camps, on totally different sides, and some, basically like parts of the business that weren't working very well, and no one was really willing to address it. And finally, my CTO just like stood up, threw a marker at the board, and like kind of cussed out the whole room, including himself, walked out of the boardroom, like walked around the office, and everyone's like, you can imagine, like everyone in the room is like speechless, like, yeah, like you're kind of like, oh my gosh. And then he slowly walked back into the room. He said, okay, let's keep talking about this. Like, we've got to figure this out. It was so beautiful because that passion is real, right? It's like, we feel it under the surface of our skin when our blood starts to boil. It's okay to bring those things forward as long as it's in service of the group progressing or of us learning or helping each other. As long as that's the intention, I think it doesn't need to look or think that every experience is going to be, diplomatic and pretty and calm, as long as we can come back together, right?
I think that's so true, right? It's that humanness. We show up as humans. Humans, we get passionate. We get, and like you say, it's knowing when I need a breath, and then I'm going to step back in. I'm going to stay here in this uncomfortable space so we can have this uncomfortable conversation, because that is where the learning and the growth comes from. It's so, so important. Because we get these ideas that we're going to be like, oh, and it's like, no, that's not life. Like, yeah. I'm not sure I've ever been like that in my life, actually, as much as I might have tried. But it's like you get really excited about things and being able to share that. And sometimes it's messy.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah. It's like, Brene Brown uses this term rumble, right? In her book, Dare to Lead.
Yes.
I'm sure most have read it here, but it's a great one for that concept of like, yeah, let's rumble. Like, let's do this. It's going to
do it.
We have to do this to see it through for the business or for the group or for the team. It's the right hard thing to do.
Totally. I'm just going to read Adrian's comment here. The rebuilding is so good to talk about. Thank you. I've been hard on myself because the last year I felt like I'm in recovery mode and didn't realize to what extent I had to recover from the previous several years. I am a just do it person, and I haven't been able to take steps to just do anything. Giving myself permission has been so difficult, and actually still is. Having conversations like this are integral. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. It's a great perspective.
So awesome.
Thanks, Adrian.
I realize I have placed a specific timeline to recovery as well. However, I believe deep down what I'm going through will help me work more deeply and empathetically with others. I couldn't agree with that more. I think sometimes our more challenging situations and the situations where we, really have to dig in and dive deep, and they're hard, we come out of those challenges learning more and being more compassionate and more empathetic to other people. And I think we bring something that we probably wouldn't have been able to bring if we hadn't gone through that experience, because there's something about bringing a level of experience to people when you've gone through something that's different than just that chat, like so true. Okay, guys, I'm only going to keep him for 10 more minutes because I want to be respectful of his time, and I'm working on my own commitments to time. If you have questions for him, please put what's it? Oh, I know. She knows. please put them in the chat box for Tyrell. Patty, do you have questions? Because I tend to monopolize all of our interviews.
There's a comment, perhaps a question. What I'm picking up from this whole conversation is the value of falling in love with the work, with the hard work, with the challenge, and having that long-term point of view. I think a lot of people get caught up in wanting to shortcut the process. This is popularity of hacks and short-term short-term magical miracle formulas and stuff like that. And what I'm picking up with is kind of the opposite. It's like, how do we fall in love with the work when it is hard? And maybe there's a question in there if you've got additional tips beyond what you've said today about, how do we fall in love with the hard work?
Yeah, I mean, but just like the observation is so bang on, Patty. And I think one of the things that, like, you get to a point, in your life, I hope, I certainly have, where you realize that like our lives are completely insignificant in the big picture. Because when you read, Sapiens and like the history of like where we've come from, and the fact that like 5 years, 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years from now, who of all of us are going to be remembered and for what? And the answer is no one, for no reason. And so therefore, like, why do we care so much about the future? Because we're not living out there, and there's no legacy that, and like, I mean, I'm talking facetiously, but I think I do it to provide a bit of a counterpoint to this constant need to like externally validate ourselves to others and like believe that we're building something that's going to have this like huge legacy or impact beyond ourselves. And like, at the end of the day, a more important question for me is like, if this is it, if like today's the last day that I get to see my wife and my 2 little girls, like, am I happy? Like, am I proud of the fact that I got to have conversations with people that I, maybe was able to like have a bit of an impact on, and they help shape me. And the legacy is the people that we actually touch that go on to have like my kids are going to be my only legacy, and like, again, facetiously, but I love that. It means I get to selfishly spend more time with them because it's such an amazing investment. So I think, it's a great question in there. The answer, I don't think, comes in days or weeks. It comes in years, in terms of like, what are the things in our life? What are the ingredients? Because it all comes down to time, attention, and energy, right? We're placing those things in constructs and vehicles, whether it's our job, our relationships, our marriage, our sports, etc. What are those things that we can honestly, to ourselves, internally, when no one's watching, say, I would not trade this for the world. Like, I get to pinch myself every day because I'm waking up and doing these things. And you know what? Like, I may not be able to build $1 million or $1 billion business. And like, that day will come when it does or when it doesn't, but I wouldn't freaking trade the stuff that I'm doing today because it's so fulfilling and it's so immersive. And like, it's amazing how much fades away when you get to that place, right? And I think that's like the beauty of the pursuit of answering that question for all of us.
I think that's kind of the truth of it, right? It's when we set those goals in the future, people who reach their goals are often feeling very unfulfilled because it's not this magical moment that they expected it to be. And they're sacrificing, but not in the way that you're talking, but in this way of frittering away their life energy on some external goal that has no real meaning to them and means nothing when they get there, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, I 5 years ago, I set a goal to be in Tokyo this summer, right, throwing discus. And I remember Georgie was at one of our connected conversations where I drew up on the wall, like, this was early on, maybe year 2 of 5, basically saying, here are all the things that are probably going to happen that I'm going to have to sacrifice by going on this path. I'm going to have to leave my job. I'm going to have to move and relocate. Might have to say goodbye to my wife permanently because that's how intense these journeys are. So I had to stop due to my injury like about a year. Actually, it's almost exactly a year ago right now. But for me, there was this incredibly powerful reflection point as COVID came up, and basically there was this, announcement that the Olympics are delayed for a year. And me just sitting with like, if I was still doing this and I had had lost my family, lost my job, my career, living in a different part of the world in sole pursuit of this one thing, would I be happy? Right? And the answer unequivocally is no, like, especially if it was then delayed. So like, there's a lot of things that I learned from the intentions that I set out to achieve that goal. Some of them were valid. Some of them I wouldn't do again, because I've learned and I've kind of upgraded that, like, it's not worth it. It's not a worthwhile pursuit in the big picture. But also, we don't get those opportunities to reflect and grow and learn and tweak if we're not out there pushing those limits. So like, I give myself the permission to say, like, it was a good journey, because you can take something out of it and shift courses a little bit for that longer term goal.
That's so cool. I think it's such a good perspective. Sorry, Adrian has here. Just speaking those words are great, Patty. What a cool perspective. Falling in love with the difficult times, knowing they will take us somewhere valuable.
Yeah. Well
exactly. I think it's such a cool thing. It's often at the end of the day, I'll kind of sit there and I'll go, okay, if this was the last day that I had on the planet, if this was it, all I got, am I okay with this day?
Yeah.
Right? How did I live this day? Am I okay with how I showed up? Am I okay with how I spent my time? Am I okay with the impact I made today? Because the reality is, this is all I have. I have this moment right now, for all intents and purposes of what I know. So am I okay with this? And if not, then I need to look at, well, where am I spending my time? What am I doing? Why am I choosing things that aren't necessarily the things that really matter to me? What's going on there? And being able to do that, that deep reflective work, and have the things that set me up to be able to do that every day. It's such a, I know why I love you. It's so awesome. It's one of my favorite humans on the planet, in case I haven't told you guys that today. Any other questions for him before we begrudgingly let him go? Funny you say that, Georgie. I often say that I am okay if I die today. People think I'm nuts or suicidal, but it's so far from that. I totally agree. I can remember when I was in Nepal, and our goal was Everest Base Camp, and we were only, I don't know, maybe in day 4 or 5 of the trek or something, and we're sitting up on this mountaintop on a acclimatization day, doing a acclimatization hike or whatever, sitting there with our guide, and the sun was out, and I'm eating this coconut crunchy cookie that you get in Nepal, which is so delicious. And so I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I'm in the Himalayas, I'm sitting on this top of this peak that's the height of Rainier, and I'm it's sunny, the clouds are coming in, I'm with this incredible guide, my friend was there, and I'm if this was it, if we never made it to base camp, if we never made it anywhere else, if this was it, if I just suddenly kicked it right here, and I'm I would be so good with this, so good with where I'm at right now, because it was these tiny little things, the cookie tasted so good, and the wind was blowing, and then the clouds were coming, and I was with amazing people, all of these tiny little micro moments that I was I'm good. And even the recognition that when I started to do that journey, it wasn't because I was trying to inspire people or whatever, but the impact of just doing it, that it had on my children, that they realized what was possible, that other people thought, well, if you can do that, what can I do? So having that moment of knowing that if this was it, I'm totally okay with it. And there's a visceral feeling to that when you have that spot where you're I'm good. And it has nothing to do with really anything external, about your work, about any of those things. And it's such that deep sense of inner knowingness that, yeah, this moment is perfect, just perfect because of what it is, yeah. And I think that leads me every day. I'm I want everybody to have that, just that sense of what that feels like. And I think through your work, you give people a way to learn how to experience that. When I think about, unlocking human potential and what does that really mean? I think it is really getting to that place of acceptance and honoring within ourselves and who we are. So, So maybe tell people how they can find you. I know he has an assessment, and you guys know how we love assessments, that he offers as well. If you're interested in the work that Tyrell does and maybe seeing how you might work with him, because he does some really, really cool things. He's an amazing, amazing writer. Like, honestly, when he does post on his blog, it's really good. I know you will get incredible insights from it. I will also share some videos that that I have from you, like the Lululemon talk, and you've got that little short one on the bottom of your email. I'll post all of those too, so you can kind of get even some more information about what he does. And I will post, don't hold me as to when, give me a good week or so, the connected conversation that you did where you explain the deep end.
Yeah.
I have that video actually.
Model, awesome. Yeah.
I'll post that too.
Love it. Yeah, I mean, just briefly, I think the biggest thing for me, obviously, this is a lot of me talking, and what I enjoy a lot. I mean, that's great. What I enjoy more is that, like, continuing to learn and understand where people are at and what questions they have, and even how, if they can, like, level up or tweak by 1%. That's really exciting. I think so. Just like in conclusion, right? I'm similar to this group in that, like, my focus right now is my focus in life is building a business and leading a team. You know, the company that I'm working for, our goal is to build $1 billion technology business, and like what excites me about that is building, you know, eventually 200 or 300 person team to be able to do that. All of the work that I do in the human performance world is essentially like philanthropic and social good. And the best place to consume that, I would say, to be honest, because my time and energy spent there is sporadic on purpose, is my own personal Instagram account or the Human Performance Project Instagram account. And then, yeah, the humanperformanceproject.com just has an assessment right now. I'm going to keep that assessment on there and add an application. And essentially the work that I do, the structured work that I do with the Human Performance Project is essentially coaching, doing like 30 to 120 day one-on-one coaching programs that focus both on, like, mostly around the physiological routine and toolkit, but also doing kind of underlying work around values, intrinsic motivation, 10-year pilgrimage, long game. So that, I mean, like, and I'm not sharing that as like necessarily an invitation, but like, it's there as a thing. I don't promote it. I don't charge for it, but it needs to be through an application. So that's probably the next piece of the puzzle for me, is to get that up on the website at some point.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'll share all your details.
I'm here.
He's very accessible. I do encourage you to connect with him. Yeah. And who knows, maybe one day we'll do a workshop where you can go through some of your stuff. That'd be kind of fun and cool.
Love that.
Yeah, so way cool. Thank you as always for being here and sharing your wisdom and your inspiration. I always learn stuff when we have conversations. I love the human that you are. I love the work that you do in the world. Yeah, thank you for being you. Exactly. The world needs people like you. And I think, like when you were first having your very first little one, I can remember thinking, there is hope for the world. There's hope for the world when we have people like you and your wife, and how you show up with your children and your family. Like, it is amazing. And so I feel very, very grateful that that the world has you in it, and that we got to hear you today.
Yeah, likewise to both of you and everyone here. Obviously, we're all kindred spirits in showing up together. So I know those words of me are a reflection of everyone here. So thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Enjoy your day.
Yeah,
Bake some bread. Swim in a pool.
It's rising.
Woo! See you later. All right. Thank you guys for staying for the day. I see by your comments that, yes, you enjoyed him as much as I do. He is one of those really amazing people. Do reach out to him. He means what he says what he means. He's one of those really authentic souls. So that is episode 27.
Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you back here tomorrow. Same
Yay!
bat time, same bat channel.
Bye.
Bye.